Updates on the Microsoft buying out Activision Blizzard saga. As we know, the EU, the EU regulatory body that I can't remember the acronym of ever off the top of my head, has been going through their investigation of this buyout. And we're on the, whatever we talked about a couple weeks ago, the phase 2, which was such sophisticated tools as asking people on the internet how they felt about the buyout. And while that was going on, of course, Sony and Microsoft are still putting out, you know, their statements one after the other in defense of and in complaining about this buyout. And so I've got some of the great highlights. Some of these happened in the same day. Shit's just like a constantly moving fucking target. As you could imagine, this is a really big buyout. There's a lot on the line for both of these companies. So the first one that came out was Sony is claiming now that with less competition, meaning if this buyout were to happen, they believe that there will be far less competition in the market for Microsoft in the video game sector, that if that were to happen, Microsoft would be able to, without pressure back from competition, increase the price of their games and increase the price of their consoles, which I have in parentheses here is ironically something that Sony literally just did here in the last, 2 months. Sony's gotten to the point in this where they're just fucking saying anything and everything that they can. It doesn't matter if it's ironic or not. They're just throwing everything at the wall and hoping for the best. But that was one of the first statements that came out. Following that up, we had Microsoft reportedly offered Sony at some point here in probably the last calendar year, obviously, a deal to keep Call of Duty on their platforms for the next 10 years. After which, I don't know if that was, if the deal was after which to renegotiate to see if it was going to continue to be on the consoles or their platforms, or if that meant that after 10 years, Microsoft would simply take the Call of Duty franchise and make it more exclusive to the Microsoft Windows and Xbox environment. After that came out, Sony then said that Microsoft's real master plan, not all the other stuff, but the real master plan, the real reason why they're buying Activision Blizzard, is so that Sony becomes another Nintendo. Which I tried to parse, but they elaborated. They said in the way that Nintendo is not a direct competitor to Microsoft, which we talked about this many times on the podcast, Mr. Black. Nintendo is not in the console war. Nintendo is a standalone thing. It's not competing with Microsoft. It's not competing with Sony. Nintendo competes with Nintendo. And that's it. And so I guess Sony is saying that Microsoft's grandiose plan, is to be the standalone in the console war and have Sony become another Nintendo, in that they won't be a direct competitor, I suppose, to Microsoft and Nintendo. Well, they're already not a competitor to Nintendo, so that's a moot point. And I thought it kind of funny or ironic to a degree that would be Microsoft's grandiose plan would be to ensure that Sony became even bigger than they already are. Even more successful, untouchable by Microsoft, meaning anything Microsoft did would have zero impact on Sony's video game market. Because that's what it is with Nintendo. Microsoft could do anything. Buying out Activision Blizzard, doing all this crazy shit, it is going to mean less than zero for Nintendo as a video game company. And so it was a really weird dig to be like, hey, Microsoft wants us to be untouchable like Nintendo. Very fucking weird. But also weird. Microsoft is not without, their own sins here. So Microsoft follows that up with, hey, Call of Duty, it isn't as big as it used to be. It's not the juggernaut that it used to be. And this is way too big of a deal being made out of this. And the way that they justified that was they listed like the Metacritic scores and like attach rates and things like that.
Like $1 billion in like the first couple of weeks.
It's made several dollars.
I mean, it's pretty fucking big. It's the biggest.
Now they didn't list that as a point though, Mr. Black. They just said, hey, the Metacritic scores, not so hot. It's not what it used to be. That's their best in all of this. And then in the midst of all of this, we also found out that reportedly the FTC, which is, of course, the Federal Trade Commission, that's the American version, the U.S. version of the regulatory body that the EU is currently in the EU right now investigating this, is looking into possibly, or it's on the table, reportedly, to file a lawsuit to block this bid for Activision Blizzard as well. That would be a bigger problem than the EU, for sure. However, it wouldn't. The FTC has lost in the past in these lawsuits, and it's just reported that it's on the table as to whether or not it will go through. So we'll have to take that with a grain of salt and wait until one actually happens or does not happen. And lastly, for the updates for this, we got, when these things are going on, kind of like the Apple versus Epic lawsuit where we got information because of court filings that wouldn't have been publicly known otherwise, we got some interesting little random pieces of information here. So one of those was that the next generation of consoles, at least from Sony and Microsoft, are planned to be earliest 2028. So that's your starting line. If they had to rush for a new console, 2028 is the earliest that you're going to be seeing that. And we also learned that, which I think we might have had this before, but it wasn't. I don't know if we knew it was definitive. But Game Pass is currently sitting around 29 million subscribers, which is a lot of subscribers. That's a pretty good fucking number of people subbed for a not insignificant amount of money per month. And we did talk about before how Phil mentioned that it is in fact profitable. People were concerned that they were burning money to be able to buy out games to be on Game Pass, but that was proved to not be the case. And then,
well, I'm sure they are burning quite a bit of money.
Oh, they're burning money, but they're still their heads above water. I think was the point, was that they're not digging themselves a grave.
Yeah. The thing is how long can they continue to keep doing that? I don't know. It's like the whole Netflix thing, right? Where they just started buying, but they were hemorrhaging money, but they were building. I mean, listen, you do need to burn money for a long time, especially in the subscription world, before you become profitable.
Oh yeah,
it's just the way that it is. I think Microsoft is doing, I don't want to say all the right things, but they're doing a lot of right things this time around opposed to the last generation.
All they need is for their exclusives to finally fucking launch, because we've been waiting forever.
Well, that, and if they can keep Call of Duty on under Microsoft, game over. It's game over.
That's a big title. And it would force, we talked about this before too, it would force Sony to actually dip into their FPS stable, of which they have 3 or 4 viable FPSs that used to be very popular in the online multiplayer space, and dig them out of storage and actually start investing in them again, instead of relying on the fact that a third-party game like Call of Duty was the biggest on PlayStation for the last 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Microsoft can keep Call of Duty on its platform and keep it away from Sony. I mean, we haven't really, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm so out of loop when it comes to console wars. So I'm going to go and be ignorant, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't really think that there's much of a console war in terms of fandom than how it used to be. The way that it used to be is either you were a Sony guy or you were a Microsoft guy. You had an Xbox or you had a Sony, and you lived and died by the sword. Now, there were some people that had both. There were some people that just didn't give a shit, and they were just, got whatever they got for Christmas, or they got whatever console that their friends played at their work, and that was the show. But it was a very contentious thing. Obviously, there is a console war. I mean, but it's between the companies. But I don't think, and once again, I can be ignorant on this, I don't think that the majority, there might be a small, loud minority, but I don't think the majority of people that own consoles have that badge of honor where they're like, I got my PlayStation 5, and fuck Microsoft, fuck Game Pass, the shit's garbage, even though it's great, like just fuck them because I'm biased, right? It's not like it's not as political, it's not like right and left. It is just a lot more people are independent now, and they buy for their own specific reasons, and that's that. But with that being said, I think if Microsoft makes it so that Call of Duty cannot be played on the PlayStation and it is solely on Microsoft, I think they reignite a console war from the fans, from a fan perspective. And I think that there's blood on the streets, man. I think people lose their fucking minds. Like the ones that have it for Sony and enjoy playing it on Sony and all that, now they're forced to go and get a Game Pass and play it on PC, or go get an Xbox and play it on an Xbox, which will rile up everybody. Then the people on the Microsoft will be like, haha, bitches, we got the Call of Duty, come join our team or get left behind, fuck boys. I think that shit will ignite a fucking straight up console war like it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that we have not seen in quite some time. Maybe I'm wrong on that mark, but it feels like that shit could go nuclear.
Well, I think so. I'm because most of my social media is game news and gaming, whatever. Like that's 90% of the shit that I follow. The other 10% being artists. So I still see a lot of the console war stuff, and I was also old enough to have gone through the era you're talking about, which was where the real console war kicked up hard was late in the Xbox PS2 era, but then really blew up in the 360 PS3 era.
Yeah.
And that was also the era where Microsoft and Sony kind of ended up on an island, and Nintendo ended up on their own island, and nobody like. I believe the console war back then was part of the reason why Nintendo ended up on their own island in the first place, because you're not wrong about it being less to a degree in terms of its visibility, but it's still very much there because it's the same reasons that it was there before. You have a lot of kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18 years old, and they've only got the money for one, and they have to defend that fucking purchase to the death.
A lot of them had to buy an Xbox because they couldn't even buy a fucking PlayStation 5. And still
currently,
can't.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I mean, there's some people that just like, it's just I don't know, man. It just doesn't. I'm out of touch. I'm an old fucking out of touch.
If you hang out around enough of like video game podcasters or reviewers, or even just follow the Xbox and PlayStation accounts on Twitter, and then the main PlayStation or main Xbox account posts, all you have to do is look in the fucking replies to see how bad it is.
Right.
But it's pockets of the internet, because like as we know, Twitter is not a real place. That it doesn't actually exist. Twitter is a very weird place, and like any social media, a minority voice, because it tends to be salacious, can get magnified to the point where it looks like a bigger problem than it is. But I do also believe that eventually, if that's held there and not corrected, like somebody just doesn't stand up and go, what the fuck are we talking about here? That mindset spreads to more than just a minority and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, not because those people held that belief originally, but because they keep seeing it over and over and over and over again, and slowly get fucking pulled into it themselves, and then the movement gets bigger and bigger. And so, like, for example, when the best example I can give you is on the website N4G, when I wrote my Final Fantasy VII Remake review, I gave it, I think it was like 2 out of 5 stars that I gave it, and I wrote a fucking magnum opus. I mean, I literally, I gave it 2, and I knew that people would be like, all right, why is this a 2? There better be good reasons. So I didn't write like a fucking 500-word fucking review.
Adam, I already know how you are, bro. You wrote a novel.
I wrote a fucking novel.
And bonus chapters.
And just everything was there. George R.R. Martin, eat your fucking heart out. My ass was plowing through that typewriter faster than I could fucking put words to paper. And I had it all there, so it was very clear as to why I didn't like it. And at the end, I still said, look, not my thing, but I get why people are going to like it. I put that up on N4G as my first review under the website at the time, and I didn't expect it to go anywhere. And the way that website works is similar to Reddit, where it goes through a vetting process from older users that have certain privileges on the site, and if they clear it, it goes into like this big pool on the front page, and then the more interactions it gets, the heat meter rises, and then eventually you can get if it pops off enough, it goes up to the top of the page. That review went to the fucking top of the page. And the first fucking like 4 hours that it was up there. And in a million years, I never would have expected to be there. But to give you an idea of console wars still existing, that website is heavily PlayStation leaning, heavily in terms of its user base. And went up there and they saw 2 out of 5. 0 people read that bitch, but were losing their goddamn mind over the fact that I didn't give it a 6 out of fucking 5. And then I ended up, my website was banned permanently for ever posting another article on that website again because so many people reported that review. So there are still pockets of the internet that are rabidly insane about the console wars. It's just that, it's not forums anymore. It's like these, websites, social media. And if you're in a silo where it doesn't exist, you're not seeing it. But if you're in that silo, my fucking Lord have mercy. People are still bonkers, bro. This shit's still fucking crazy. But I do agree, 100%, that it would be if it's at a 9 now, that shit's gonna be a fucking 14 out of 10 if Call of Duty were to ever go to any console exclusively, whether it was PlayStation or Xbox or whatever. It'd be riots in the streets. Shit would be crazy.
Yep.
Shit would be fucking crazy. So yeah, that's the latest updates for that. The most interesting part there is the whisperings of the FTC, because we didn't hear anything about the FTC until now. And so if that does go through, that will certainly complicate things a lot more than what Microsoft has already been facing. But it is kind of fun if you keep up with it just to see what Microsoft and Sony are saying, because both of them are just spewing completely random bullshit. Like Sony's saying, oh no, they'll increase their console prices literally right after Sony increased their console prices, and the price of games to $70 on their fucking platform is just fucking hilarious to me.
I just think Sony's desperate right now, man. I think their back's against the wall. And they're like, fuck. Like, we need to change whatever narrative we can. They're in trouble right now. They're in trouble.
Because Xbox literally dropped the price of their consoles. Like you could buy in the last week for a moment in time. I don't know if it's still on. You could purchase a brand new Xbox Series X for $189 US. $189. Now I know it's not the Series X, but a Series S for $189 is insane.
Yeah.
That's less than a fucking Nintendo handheld.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just a crazy back and forth. It is desperation on both sides. Microsoft's desperate to get it to go.
Sure.
Sony's desperate to make it stop. Nintendo's just watching all of this in the background, laughing their fucking heads off because they don't give a fuck about like wherever this goes. And it's a complete gong show. Oh, there you go. In Canada right now, the Series X is up for $299 in Canadian Monopoly money.
Damn, I feel scammed, man. I just bought one of them bitches and I paid like fucking
$429.
Yeah, it was like $500, I think, some shit like that, man.
Got fleeced.
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy, bro. Oh, the Series S, in Canada for $299. He apologizes.
Okay, I was gonna say, whoa, man,
that's a deep discount.
I got ripped.
Yeah. Still, a Series S in Canadian dollars for $299 is pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking good. So there you go. And I suspect there will be a lot of deals with like gift cards and shit too that will like get comboed for Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all that shit coming up.
Christmas season, everything's coming.
Gonna get fucking bonkers. So there you go.